Nokia owned 40% of the global market in 2007. 6 years later, they sold the whole division for pennies. They didn't lose to Apple. Nokia shows you what structural collapse looks like, fast on paper, slow in practice. If that sounds like your org, stay with me. I've been the CTO diagnosing this from the inside. Restaurant delivery, mortgage, residential, leasing, insurance, county court systems. 25 years, 5 industries, same pattern. It never shows up in the postmortem. It shows up 2 years before the collapse in the way decisions get made. There's a question with a yes or no answer. And if your org gives you the wrong one, you don't have a decision system. You have a drift machine. Stay with me. Nokia is what broke, and Amazon is how you fix it. So let's get into it and see how that works. By 2004, Nokia's leadership could see the problem. The company had grown fast and the old structure wasn't keeping up. So they did what most large organizations do when they feel slow. They reorganized. The new model was a matrix, P&L on one axis, shared platforms on the other. In theory, elegant. In practice, a circular dependency dressed up as a strategy. Because nobody owned anything end to end. Product managers needed resources they didn't control. Platform teams had accountabilities that pointed in 2 directions at once. Mid-level executives were supposed to lead through influence rather than authority. Now that sounds reasonable on a slide deck, but it collapses the moment someone needs a real decision and the person responsible doesn't have the power to make it. The ones who stayed learned one thing fast: protect your peace. Nobody was building the whole. Now, here's where it gets concrete. By 2009, Nokia had 57 incompatible Symbian versions across its product line. 57. Not 57 features, not 57 updates. 57 separate versions of the same operating system, each one a scar left behind by a team that couldn't get another team to agree on a shared direction. Every new device had to rebuild and retest from scratch. The OS wasn't just fragmented technically, it was a physical map of an organization that had lost the ability to make shared decisions at the platform level. The hardware teams were still good. Nokia's device engineering was genuinely excellent, but the smartphone war had already moved away from best hardware to best integrated product experience. That shift required someone to own the full customer outcome, not just a functional slice of it. And nobody did. Camera teams optimized cameras. UI teams optimized UI. Symbian teams tried to hold together an OS being pulled in 57 different directions by product lines that couldn't agree on a shared platform. And the top leadership didn't have the technical fluency to cut through the noise. And a management culture that punished candor made sure that the real problems never surfaced cleanly anyway. By 2010, the app economy Apple built was already 3 years old. Nokia's engineers knew the platform pivot was coming. Middle management had real anxiety about it, but the matrix had dissolved the escalation paths that would have turned that anxiety into a decision. So it stayed anxiety. Nokia built what I call a distributed monolith of people. Technically, separate teams, organizationally fused by dependency, and capable of moving without negotiating permission across every function. It's not a talent failure. That's an architecture failure. And Amazon, around the same time, was staring at the same wall, but they chose a completely different way to get through it. Amazon hit a similar wall in the early 2000s. Rapid growth, a monolithic code base, teams constantly blocking each other's deployments. When something broke, 3 teams pointed at each other. Every infrastructure change needed senior approval. Velocity flatlined. The technical fix was microservices, but Bezos understood that the organizational fix had to run in parallel, or the technical decoupling, it would mean nothing. 2 pizza teams became the shorthand. The real principle is separability. 1 team, 1 thing, complete ownership. No shared accountability blurring who's responsible for what. Small enough that when something breaks, nobody has to ask whose problem it is. The actual mechanism is a single-threaded leader One person wakes up every morning thinking about exactly one product, one service, one customer segment, not split across two priorities, not matrixed into 3 reporting lines. One thing. If something breaks, that person owns the fix. If a customer outcome deteriorates, that person owns the diagnosis. Lifestyle ownership follows directly from that. The team that builds it runs it. No handoff to an operations team that inherited a system they didn't design and can't modify. You build it, you run it, you fix it. That accountability loop is what keeps architecture decisions honest. Before a line of code gets written, Amazon's PR FAQ process forces the team to define the customer outcome in plain language, not a Jira ticket, a press release, written before the product exists. Because if you can't explain the customer benefit before you build it, you're building toward an internal goal, not a real need. Most leaders who see this try to copy the structure. They count heads, drink teams, call it 2 pizza. They copy the pizza and miss the principle entirely. Meet Priya. She's an engineering manager, 8 years in, smart team, and a delivery system that turned into a permission maze, one reasonable process at a time. She didn't build it on purpose. Nobody does. Here are the 5 questions she used to find out exactly how bad it had gotten. Question 1. Can one person clearly say yes or no to this initiative without forming a committee? Not, who should we loop in? Yes or no? One person. Full stop. If the answer is no, you don't have a decision domain. You have a decision float, and it will drift upward by default until it lands on your calendar. Question 2. Does one team own the customer outcome end to end, not just a functional slice of it? Nokia's camera team owned cameras. Their UI team owned UI. Nobody owned the phone. If your teams are optimizing their piece without accountability for the whole, you're watching the same film. Question 3. Can the team ship a meaningful improvement without waiting on 3 other departments? If shipping requires a coalition, you don't have ownership. You have a team with authority on paper and anxiety in practice. Question 4. When something breaks, does everyone know who owns the fix within 5 minutes? Not after a Slack thread. Not after a war room gets assembled. 5 minutes. The answer is no. You don't have runtime ownership. You have an incident response scavenger hunt. And somewhere in your org right now, an on-call engineer is pinging 4 people, hoping one of them knows whose problem this actually is. Question 5. Are meetings being used to make decisions or to negotiate permission between competing silos? This one's the tell. When your calendar fills up with alignment meetings, that's not collaboration, that's a governance failure, wearing a collaboration costume. Your calendar became the real org chart. Score it. 3 or more no answers, and you don't have an operating model. You have a corporate escape room, and your best engineers are the ones who hate escape rooms the most. So here's what Priya changed. Just 3 moves. She mapped every active initiative to a single owner with a yes-no authority. Not a sponsor, not a steering committee, not a DRI in name only. One person, real authority, visible to everyone. Then she redrew team boundaries around customer outcomes instead of functions. Not the payments team, organized by technical discipline. One team owning the full customer payment experience from first attempt to reconciliation. The boundary follows the outcome, not the org chart. Then she replaced the alignment meetings with written decision artifacts, escalation triggers documented in advance, narratives written before decisions are made. When a question arises, it hits a written record of who owns it and what criteria apply. Rather than a recurring meeting where 4 directors negotiate the answer in real time, those 3 moves didn't fix everything overnight, but they gave her team something they hadn't had in 2 years. A clear answer to the question, who decides this? Here's the reframe that truly matters. Speed is not a talent problem. It's not a motivation problem. It's not fixable by hiring better engineers or running more stand-ups or adding another layer of program management to coordinate the coordination. Speed is a governance choice, okay? Nokia had brilliant engineers, Amazon had a broken monolith and teams stepping on each other. The difference wasn't the people. It was the operating model one of them chose to build and the one the other chose to inherit. Your team may not be slow because they lack talent. They may be slow because every meaningful decision has been wrapped in shared ownership, cross-functional alignment, and approval theater. Nobody designed it this way, but you've been tolerating it, and tolerance is a choice. If nobody owns the outcome, everybody owns the delay. That's not a people problem. It's never been a people problem. It's always the system. You built it, you can rebuild it. If you're still the bottleneck next week, it's not your team, it's your boundaries. Now, get to work.